I remember how the grass bent, and I remember how it straightened again. It always straightened again. It never failed to do so. I watched it morning after morning, afternoon after afternoon, evening after evening. And always the same. The grass would bend and then the grass would rise. Sometimes it would take longer. Sometimes it would take less. But it would always rise. That is the nature of grass. It bends and it rises. There was a tree not far from the flat stones. A small tree, not very tall, not very strong, but it stood there. It stood there yesterday. It stood there the day before. It stood there the day before that. I do not remember a time when it did not stand there. And I do not imagine a time when it will not. It is not an impressive tree. It does not blossom in spring. It does not turn golden in the fall. It is a tree that simply remains. It is a tree that does not wish to be more than what it is. I respect that tree. Some days I count the stones. There are 17. 17 stones that are flat enough to sit upon. I have sat on each one by one. Over the years, I prefer the fourth. The fourth stone has a smoothness to it. Not too smooth, just enough to notice. It is slightly warmer than the others. Perhaps it remembers the sun more. Perhaps it is made of something that keeps the heat. Or perhaps it is just the stone I prefer. I do not ask much of the stone, and it does not ask much of me. I have watched the same bird fly past the same tree. Not once, not twice, but many times. I do not know what kind of bird it is. I never learned the names. But it is a bird that does not sing. Or if it does, it sings quietly. It flies in a line. Not high, not low. Just where it needs to. Sometimes it lands. Sometimes it does not. But always it flies. Always past the tree. Always from left to right. I have never seen it go right to left. I wonder if it ever will. There is a patch of dirt to the left of my favorite stone. The patch is not very large. It is not very interesting, but it is there. It is always there. Sometimes a small weed grows in it. Sometimes not. Sometimes it is cracked from the heat. Sometimes it is soft from the rain. I do not disturb it. I let it be. It has not asked to be changed. It has not asked to be noticed. But I notice it, because it is there, always there. The sun rises in the east. I do not need to remind myself, but I do. It is a fact worth repeating. The sun rises in the east, and it sets in the west. I have watched it do both. Many, many times. I have never seen it forget. I have never seen it rise from the north. I have never seen it pause. It rises slowly, sets slowly. It travels in between. And in between the light changes. Not fast, not slow, just enough. Just enough to remind me that time still moves. Sometimes the air smells like dust. Sometimes it smells like water. Sometimes it smells like nothing. I breathe in the air. I breathe it out. I do not question what it brings. I accept it. There is no need to ask for more. Air is what it is. Some say it carries messages. I do not know. It has never told me anything directly, but it has never lied. I trust the air. There are marks on one of the stones. Faint marks. They may have been carved. Or perhaps they are natural. I have looked at them closely. They resemble nothing, but they are still marks, still lines, still shapes. I once tried to follow one with my finger. It went in a loop, a slow loop. It did not begin and it did not end. It was simply a loop. I think about that often. A loop that goes nowhere but still exists. Rain falls when it chooses, not when I ask. not when I prepare, just when it decides. Sometimes heavy, sometimes not, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. The sound of rain is soft on the stones, softer on the grass, softest on the dirt. It makes puddles that do not last. It leaves behind a smell, a damp smell, a smell of something remembered, but not clearly. I sit in the rain sometimes. I do not cover myself. I let it be. I remember the way the ground feels beneath the soles of my feet. It is not soft but not hard. It gives only slightly, just enough to remind me that it is not stone, though stones are near. The ground holds warmth in the late afternoon, a faint memory of the sun. I sometimes press my hand to it, not for a reason, not for a sign, simply because it is there and I am there. The ground does not change quickly. It does not shift unless it must. It is patient. It is sure. I respect the ground. There is a bend in the old path that no one walks anymore. The path is not marked. It is not worn, but I know where it once turned. I see where the grass grows differently there, as if remembering footsteps long forgotten. I do not follow the path. I do not walk the bend, but I look at it sometimes. I wonder if it still leads somewhere, or if it now leads nowhere. It makes no difference. The bend exists whether I know the destination or not. Sometimes when I sit and listen, I hear something far away. A creak, a thump, a hush. Not often, and never clearly. The sound arrives as if through water, distant and slow. It is not the kind of sound that demands. It only lingers. It reminds me that the world is not entirely silent, that even in stillness, something moves, but it does not move fast, and it does not come close. It remains far. That is where it belongs. There is a low stone wall beyond the tree. It is broken in places, not by time, not by force, just by the quiet crumble of years. The wall once marked something, perhaps a boundary, perhaps a garden, perhaps nothing at all. Now it simply stands, or rather parts of it do. Some stones lie in the grass, others are hidden beneath it. The wall does not tell its story, it simply is. I have seen the same shadow pass over the same stretch of earth, day after day. It comes when the sun is high, just before the afternoon fades. The shadow is of a branch, always the same branch. The shape never changes. The length does. It moves slowly, like everything here. It does not leap. It does not shift quickly. It stretches a little more each time. Then it retreats. This is the way of things. This is the rhythm. Insects hum when it is warm. Not loudly, just enough. A background to the quiet. Their flight is uneven. Their paths uncertain. But they do not crash. They do not falter. They continue. I do not sweat at them. I do not watch them closely, but I feel them. A brush of air, a buzz, then silence again. They are part of the slow song that surrounds me. A song without melody. A song that repeats forever. The tree has knots in its bark. I have counted them, not all at once. Over time, there are 23 that I can see. Maybe more I cannot. The bark is rough but not unfriendly. Sometimes it peels, revealing a smoother surface beneath. The tree does not mind. The bark will return. It always returns. The tree does not need help. It asks for nothing. It gives nothing. It simply remains. That is its gift. The heat here is not fierce. It builds slowly. It wraps around the stones, then around me. It is not cruel. It does not chase me away. It invites me to stay still, to sweat slowly, to breathe through the warmth. I do not resist. I do not hide. I let the heat remind me that the world is still alive, that time still moves, that I am not forgotten by the sun. In the cold, things become quieter still. Sound travels farther but less often. My breath becomes visible, though I do not notice until I exhale. I hold my hands together, not to warm them, but to keep them from forgetting one another. I do not shiver. I do not complain. The cold is honest, tells no lies. It hides nothing. It shows the shape of things with clarity. I once found a feather near the tree, white with a trace of gray. Not long, not short, light. I picked it up. I looked at it. Then I set it down again. It stayed for a day, maybe two. Then it was gone. The wind, perhaps, or another creature, or simply the passage of time. I do not miss it, but I remember it. It was a quiet thing. It belonged for a moment, and then it did not. Sometimes I close my eyes and listen to the rhythm of my own heart. Not quickly, not loudly, just there. A slow beat, patient sound, tells me that I am still here, that the stillness has not taken me entirely, that I am part of it, not lost in it. I do not fear the quiet. I do not fill it. I rest in it. I breathe in it, and I let it hold me. The land was here before names, before borders, before paths were made through it. The hills did not have names. The rivers flowed without being called. The wind moved through tall grass that no one yet had chosen to cut. It was not silent, but it was not spoken. It was still in the way an old breath is still. Before the people came, before the drums, before the words carved into stone, there was only the shape of the land and the sound of the birds. The trees were tall then, taller than now. They had not yet been marked or chosen. Their trunks were not carved. Their branches reached slowly. Each ring inside told of another quiet year. A dry summer, a long snow, a wind that stayed for weeks. But the trees did not write this down. They did not care to. They only grew. The forest stretched from the water's edge to the mountains. There were no clearings, only spaces where light fell differently. There was a time when buffalo moved slowly across the plains, not in herds, in lines, in spreads. Their paths wore into the earth, but no one called them roads. The animals were quiet in their movements, heavy but not loud. They stopped at streams. They moved with the sun. The ground accepted their weight without protest. Grass rose back behind them. The land was not harmed. It was only touched. The rivers were wide. They curved. They did not rush. Their banks were soft, not carved by machines. The water was cold, not bitter, just cold. It held the light of the sky. It reflected trees that stood without fear. Beavers moved in and out of the banks. They built without blueprints. They gnawed without permission. No one questioned their work. The river accepted their changes, then returned to its way. Sometimes mist would rise from the valley. It would not hurry. It would not come often. It moved like smoke but smelled of nothing. It hid the tops of trees. It made the land quiet, as if it had decided to sleep a little longer. The mist did not speak, but its silence could be heard. The animals paused. The birds waited. Then, when the sun touched it, it drifted away. The people who were here long ago did not hurry either. They walked on narrow paths through the tall trees. Their steps were soft. They did not call out. They moved with the land. They lived near water. They fished, but they did not speak while doing so. They sat beside the fire, but they did not always tell stories. Sometimes they only stared into the flame, and the flame did not demand attention. Their dwellings were low and round, made from what was nearby: bark, branches, mud, hide. Nothing sharp, nothing tall, nothing that needed to be seen from far away. The doors were low. You had to bow to enter. Inside it was warm, but also dark. The light came only from fire or from the small opening above. And that was enough. It did not need to be bright. Children played near the stream, not with toys, with stones, with sticks. They spoke softly. They built little walls and let the water run over them. Then they let them fall. They did not cry when they broke. They simply started again. A game, but also not a game. A way to feel the stream. A way to pass the sun's long stretch across the sky. There was a woman who gathered bark from a birch tree. She did not cut deeply. She peeled it slowly, with care. She placed it in a basket made from reeds. She did not speak to the tree, but her silence was not empty. It was full of respect. She would carry the bark home. She would use it to wrap dried meat. The bark would crackle softly, but it would protect what was inside. There were no fences, no corners, no roads drawn with chalk or paint. The paths were made by feet, or by deer, or by time. They curved like the river. They bent around stones. They widened where people stopped to rest. They faded where no one walked. The earth remembered where the people had been. Not loudly, not forever, but long enough. In the evenings, the sound of flutes could sometimes be heard. Not close, not far. The notes rose slowly, like smoke. They did not form songs. They formed spaces. Between one tone and the next was room to breathe, room to rest, room to forget the shape of the day. The flute did not shout. It did not weep. It only spoke quietly, in circles of air. The ground was marked by the slow feet of elk. Not in haste, not in panic, just a path made over years. A place where moss did not grow as thick, where the grass leaned a little lower. The elk moved at dusk. Their antlers brushed against the hanging branches. They left nothing behind but silence. No broken trees, no scattered leaves, only memory in the stillness. Somewhere near the river, stones were arranged in a circle. No one knew who placed them, or when. They were not tall. They were not sharp. Just round, smooth stones, worn by time, touched by many rains. In the center of the circle, grass grew differently, slower, shorter, as if remembering fire. No smoke remained, no heat, but something had happened there once. Long ago, it no longer mattered, but the stones stayed. There were birds in the early morning, not always singing, sometimes only gliding from one branch to another. Their wings made soft sounds, not flapping, more like sighs. Their feathers held the gray of the dawn sky, not bright, not dull, just there. They watched the world below with calm eyes. They did not fear. They did not hope. They existed in the soft part of time before the sun was fully awake. The people carved small figures from bone, not for worship, not for display, just to pass the hours, just to remember the shape of a fish or a bear or the moon. The carvings were smooth from handling, passed from one hand to another. No one claimed them. No one needed to. They simply were. The figures sat in bowls, or near sleeping places, quiet, forgotten yet familiar. Fire was not used for light. It was used for heat, for cooking, for smoke to carry the scent of meat into the sky. Fire did not speak loudly, crackled, popped. It breathed. It lived for a time. Then it died. Ash remained. It was swept away, or scattered, or simply left for the wind. The people did not mourn the fire. They made it again the next night, and the next. In the forest, the trees leaned slightly, not from wind, from time, from the slow pull of age. Some had fallen, their trunks hollowed by insects. Moss covered their sides. New trees grew from them, life from death, but not quickly, not urgently. Took many seasons. No one marked the day it began. No one marked when it ended, because it did not end. It only changed shape. The sky stretched wide, too wide to hold in thought. It shifted in color, not suddenly, but with grace, from pale blue to gold to deep gray. At night, the stars returned, not all at once, one by one, like memories, some bright, some dim, some blinking as if unsure. The people lay on their backs and watched them, not to name them, just to see them, just to know that the sky was still there. The wind brought scents from far away, sometimes smoke, sometimes pine, sometimes the salt of distant water. The people did not follow the scent. They only noticed it. They accepted that it came, and that it would go. The wind was not loyal. It wandered, turned without warning, forgot what it had touched, but it always returned. There was a drum once. It was not played loudly. It was played slowly, a steady beat, like walking, like breathing. The drum was not used for dancing. It was used for remembering, remembering things that did not have words. A flood, a hunt, a long winter, a lost name. The drum said them all without speaking. The sound faded quickly, but the feeling remained. Children learned without being taught. They watched. They listened. They followed the adults not too close. They learned how to clean a fish, how to make cord from bark, how to hear the sound of deer on dry leaves. There were no tests,
no lessons.
just time and repetition and quiet correction. They were not hurried. They were allowed to forget and to remember in their own rhythm. Sometimes in winter the snow covered everything, the paths, the stones, the stream, the voices. It came like a blanket laid over the whole world. The people did not fear it. They sat inside. They ate stored food. They did not speak often. The fire was small. The cold outside was large. But no one fought it. They waited. They breathed. They slept. They dreamed of geese returning. The canoes were made from hollowed trees. Not quickly, not with blades that shouted. The shaping was slow, with fire, with stone, with hands. The wood was not forced. It was persuaded. The people did not hurry the canoe. They waited until it was ready. They placed it in the water gently. If it floated, it was good. If not, they began again. The river always waited. The water held many things: small fish, smooth stones, forgotten leaves. It was never still, but it was never wild. It moved in curves, around bends, over rocks, under fallen limbs. It whispered as it passed, not to be heard, just to be known. The people dipped their hands into the water before drinking, not to test it, just to greet it. The water responded by continuing on. The plains stretched wider than the eyes could hold, covered in grass, covered in wind. Nothing stopped the horizon. It was always ahead, always out of reach. The people crossed it slowly, on foot, with their belongings tied to poles dragged behind them. They did not complain of the distance. They followed the stars. They followed the season. They followed each other. The sun rose behind the hills. It did not rush. It climbed, slowly, one finger of light at a time, touching the tops of trees, warming the stone, waking the birds. The people watched it but did not greet it. It came whether they saw it or not. It had come before them. It would come after. But still they watched. Every morning, every year. Animals were not pets. They were not enemies. They were part of the place. Deer watched from behind trees. Foxes walked across empty paths. Bears appeared near water. Each moved with care. None made noise without reason. They took only what they needed. They left when they were done. The people did the same. There was no need for conflict. At the edge of the wood, there were tall grasses, taller than a man. They moved like water when the wind touched them, waving, bending, whispering. The people passed through them with their hands held out, feeling the brush of each stalk, letting the grass remember their presence, not asking for passage, not marking the way, just passing through. Quietly, the moon rose differently than the sun. It did not bring light. It brought shadow. It made the night softer, not brighter. The people did not fear the dark. They moved slower, yes, but they did not stop. They trusted the sound of their own steps. They listened to the owls, to the frogs, to the movement of leaves. The dark was not an end. It was a pause. When a person died, they were not buried far away. They were buried near, under the same trees, near the same fire, wrapped in hide, with a piece of stone, a tool, a memory. The people sat near for a while. Then they walked away. The earth was not disturbed much, just enough. It would heal. The grass would return. The roots would accept the shape of the one now sleeping. Stories were told sometimes, not to entertain, not to teach, just to pass time, just to feel words in the mouth. The stories did not begin sharply. They did not end cleanly. They moved like the river. Sometimes they returned to the same moment again. Sometimes they did not finish. No one minded. The story was not the point. The speaking was. The wind sometimes came from the mountains, cold and dry. It brought dust. It brought silence. It moved across the open places without stopping, passed between huts, between trees, between sleeping people. It left nothing behind. It asked for nothing. It only reminded the world that the mountains were still there, watching, listening, waiting. There were seasons, but not like names. Not winter, spring, summer, fall. There were times of berries, times of fish, times of wind, times of snow. Each one returned. Each one stayed as long as it needed. The people did not mark calendars. They watched the buds. They watched the birds. They knew when to wait, when to gather, when to rest. The children grew taller, slowly, like trees. They were not pushed. They were not measured. They were allowed to wonder, to ask, to sit, to run. Sometimes they said nothing for days. Then suddenly they would ask something that no one had thought of, and the elders would nod, not always with an answer, sometimes just in respect. The land did not belong. It was not owned. It was lived with. It was fed by ash, by rain, by walking feet. It did not ask. It did not give. It simply was. The people did not build monuments. They left no marks that could not be erased by wind or time. They did not need to be remembered. The land remembered enough. There were times when the clouds covered the sky for many days. The light became soft. The shadows disappeared. The days passed in grayness. The people did not complain. They moved through it. They cooked slowly. They mended things. They waited. When the sun returned, it did not do so with drama. It appeared, like a forgotten name suddenly remembered. The land accepted it without reaction. The bark on the trees held patterns, not made by people, made by time, by insects, by cold nights and warm days. The bark curled in places, peeled in others. Some trees were smooth, some were rough. The people did not peel it for beauty. They peeled it for use, for medicine, for rope, for baskets. Nothing more than needed, nothing less than enough. In certain places, stones were stacked, not high, just 3 or 5, balanced, not forced. The wind had not knocked them over. The rain had not scattered them. The people did not protect them. They just left them. No one asked why. The reason had already passed. The meaning was in the balance. In the quiet way the stones leaned on each other. There were insects everywhere, some small enough to miss, some loud enough to notice. They moved through the grass, through the bark, over the surface of the water. The people did not kill them without cause. They did not name them all. They only knew which ones bit, which ones glowed, which ones arrived before rain. The rest were left alone. They belonged. The fire pit was always in the center. Not large, not deep, ringed by stones. The ashes were brushed aside each morning. New sticks were laid, sometimes moss, sometimes dry grass, then fire, then warmth, then food, then light, and then slowly again darkness. The fire was not a spectacle. It was part of the day, like breath, like silence. Clothing was simple, woven, wrapped, tied. It changed with the season. In the cold, layers. In the heat, fewer. It was not made to impress. It was made to last, to keep warm, to cover, sometimes decorated. But even then, the patterns were slow, repeated, the same lines, the same shapes.
No rus.
Only the rhythm of fingers moving thread through thread. When snow melted, the earth became soft. Footprints lasted longer. Water gathered in low places. The people stepped carefully. They did not curse the mud. They accepted it. It meant spring was near. It meant fish would return. It meant berries would come. The mud would dry. Until then, it held the memory of every step. There were caves in the cliffs, some shallow, some deep. The people did not live in them. They visited, sometimes to leave a mark, a handprint, a symbol, a line of dots. Then they left. The caves kept the marks, even when wind blew hard, even when rain filled the air. The caves remembered quietly, never loudly, never completely. Sometimes people gathered from other places. They came with different tools, different words, but they sat near the same fire. They ate the same fish. They drank the same water. They listened to each other, not always to understand, sometimes only to be near. Then they left again.
No promises.
No signs, just footprints slowly fading. The dogs stayed near. They were not tied. They were not commanded. They stayed because they chose to. They slept by the fire. They followed the children. They barked at strange sounds, but not often. Their eyes were calm. Their steps were soft. They were part of the place, not above, not below, just beside. Leaves turned in the fall, slowly, one at a time, green to yellow, yellow to brown, brown to ground. The people did not rush to gather them. They let them fall. They let them cover the paths. The sound of walking changed, softer, quieter, like moving through memory. The leaves stayed until the snow came. Then they disappeared. The hills were not climbed often. There was no reason to. They were not higher than the sky. They did not offer secrets. But sometimes a person would sit on one, alone, for a long time, watching the land, listening to nothing, saying nothing. Then they would come down, changed perhaps, or maybe not. No one asked why they went. There were tools made from stone, not sharp like metal, sharp enough. They were shaped slowly with other stones. Chips fell away. The shape emerged. Not quickly, not easily. The people did not expect perfection, only usefulness. A blade for cutting bark, point for hunting, a scraper for hides. They held them in their hands. They felt their weight. They placed them down with care. The river changed with the season. In spring it was full. In summer, slower. In fall it whispered. In winter it hid beneath ice. The people did not fight this. They walked beside it. They waited for fish when fish came. They fetched water when it flowed. They listened when it froze. The river did not speak in words, but it always said something. Grass grew between the huts, not planted, not tended, found space. It grew slowly. It bent under feet. It returned after. In dry seasons it turned yellow. In wet seasons green. Sometimes children lay in it, looking up, at nothing, at everything. The grass did not mind. It held their weight. Then it stood again. Food was gathered in parts, not all at once, not more than needed. Roots dug with sticks, berries picked one by one, nuts cracked with stones. The people stored what they could, in bark containers, in woven baskets, in pits, but always with care, with thought, with memory, so that the food would last, so that the people would last. Birds nested near the edges of the village, of the woods, of the water. Their songs were short, their wings fast. They came with the sun. They left with the dusk. The people watched them, not for signs, not for omens, just because they were there, just because they moved and rested and lived. The older people sat often, near the fire, near the doorway, near each other. They spoke little. They did not explain. They were not asked. Their silence was full. Their eyes saw far, not forward, not backward, just far. Sometimes they held the hands of children. Sometimes they closed their eyes. But they did not sleep. Not yet. Bones were cleaned after the meal. Not thrown. Not wasted. Some became tools. Some became needles. Some became music. Clicked together. Tapped on stone. Whispered through hollow. Not loud. Not fast. Just enough. Just something. Bones were part of the story. Not just of the animal, but of the people who used them. The lake held fog in the morning. It moved slow, across the surface, over the reeds, through the trees. The people did not call it beautiful. They did not call it anything. They looked at it. They breathed it in, touched their skin. Then it left. The lake remained, still, quiet, deep. When two people met, they did not speak right away. They looked. They waited. A nod. A small word. Maybe nothing. It was enough. There was no need for questions. There was time. The meeting was not about exchange. It was about presence. It was about space. The fish swam near the banks, in groups, or alone. Their backs glimmered in the sun. The water moved with them, not against them. The people watched. Sometimes they cast lines. Sometimes they stood still, long enough, quiet enough. Then a fish came close, close enough, and then it was taken, quickly, cleanly, with thanks. The stars never argued with the sky. They waited for dark. They arrived, one after another. They did not rush. They stayed until morning. They did not explain themselves. They only appeared. The people lay on their backs, on hides, on earth, on stone, watching, thinking nothing, just watching. There were paths through the woods, not marked, not made, just walked, so many times that the grass lay flat, that the trees leaned away. The people followed them. They did not own them. They did not claim them. They just walked, with baskets, with bundles, with silence. The rain did not fall with anger, fell steadily, softly, drop by drop, on leaves, on roofs, on skin. The people did not run from it. They sat beneath coverings. They listened. They watched the circles in puddles. They let their clothes become heavy, then dry again. The rain was part of the day, not apart from it. Clay was found near the banks, red or gray, wet and heavy. It was taken by hand, pressed, rolled, hollowed, not fast, not forced. Pots formed slowly, from the center, with circles, with pressure, with patience, then left to dry, then placed near fire, not in it, beside it, enough heat, no more. The clay became vessel, became storage, became plain. The buffalo moved far away, across lands with no trees, just wind, just dust, just grass. The people followed sometimes, not always, only when needed. They did not take many. They took what they could carry. They used all, the hide, the meat, the sinew, the horn, nothing left to waste. They left no trace but footprints. The silence in the night was not empty. It was full, full of breath, of distant howls, of the creak of trees, the snap of frost, the murmur of sleeping animals. The people heard it all, and still called it silence, because nothing spoke loudly, nothing asked to be heard. It was a silence that welcomed, that covered like a blanket. Children played near the edge of the woods. They made small piles of sticks, threw stones into water, watched ants. They laughed, but not loudly. They ran, but not far. They made up words, games, songs, then forgot them, then sat, then listened. They were not told to stop. They were not told to go. They simply were, like the wind, like the grass. A single tree stood in the field, not planted, just grown, alone, strong. His bark split from heat and age. Birds nested in its limbs. Squirrels chewed its nuts. People passed by it, touched it, sat near it, looked at it when the sky turned orange. No one named it. It needed no name. It was always there. Feathers were used for many things: decoration, ceremony, prayer, but also for warmth, for softness, for fletching. The people found them on the ground, never taken from a living bird, always received, never demanded. The feathers held wind, held sky, held memory, light and firm. moving with the breath. When storms came, the people stayed inside. They sat together, in circles, in corners. No words needed, only presence. They watched the light through the cracks. They heard the wind in the wood. They let it pass. It always passed. After the world was cleaner, the air cooler, the sky deeper. Some trees bent over rivers. Their roots showed. Their leaves touched water. Fish hid in their shade. Birds sang in their branches. The people knew these trees. They did not mark them. They did not climb them. They sat near them, ate near them, slept near them. The tree said nothing. The river said nothing. The silence was enough. Beads were made from shell, from bone, from seeds. They were shaped with care, with time, with many fingers. They were not currency. They were memory, carried in strands, on wrists, on necks, given, never traded, never sold, given to mark a moment, to show respect, to remember the quiet. There were markings on stone, not deep carvings, just scratches, lines, circles, spirals, made long ago, by hands now gone. The people did not clean them. They did not trace them. They let them be. The stone kept the markings, slowly fading, but still there, even in rain, even in time. Smoke rose in thin threads, from huts, from fires. It drifted upward. It moved sideways in wind, then disappeared. The people watched it sometimes, not to read it, not to know anything from it, just to see, just to feel the moment stretch with it, high and slow. When a person passed, they were not buried quickly. There was time, there was stillness. The body was washed, wrapped, remembered. Words were not needed. Presence was. Then the earth opened, then closed. The person returned. No monuments, no names. The memory was shared, not written. The moon rose later each night. It followed its own path. The people followed it with their eyes. They marked time by it, but not with numbers, with moments. The full moon meant night gathering. The new moon meant deeper dark. Each phase had rhythm, not rule. The moon changed, and so did the people. There were valleys between the hills, quiet places, cool and shadowed. Birds nested there. Deer walked there. People rested there. For a day, for an hour, then moved on. The valley said nothing. It did not ask to be known. It simply was. Place between places. Some men and women painted their faces. With ash, with ochre, with mud. Not every day. Not for beauty. For ceremony. For memory. For silence. The paint cracked with heat. Washed with rain. Disappeared with time. Like the reasons. Like the words that explained them. Wind moved differently at different times. In spring, it carried the scent of new bark. In summer, the dust of far paths. In fall, the dry leaves. In winter, the bite of ice. The people felt it on their skin, on their backs, on their cheeks. They did not hide from it. They moved with it. They understood it. The animals were not pets. They were not hunted without reason. They were watched, respected, sometimes followed. Their movements spoke of seasons, of danger, of return. A fox crossing the trail meant something. A bird flying low meant something else. But the people did not always name the meanings. Some things were only to be seen. When wood was needed, it was taken from fallen trees, or from branches that bent easily. Never from the heart, never from the top. The axe was slow, the carrying slower. The wood was dried, then used, for shelter, for fire, for tool. No more than needed, always just enough. A song might begin without words. A hum, a tone, repeated, built slowly. Others joined, or not. It was not for performance. It was for presence, for remembering, for breathing. The song did not end. Faded, like smoke, like twilight, like footprints in sand. The sand near rivers was soft. It held shapes, a foot, a paw, fallen leaf. The people stepped lightly. They saw the signs. Then the signs were gone, washed, dried, changed. The river never held one shape. The people never walked one way. There were no walls, no fences, only space. Trees marked boundaries, rocks marked turns, but nothing closed, nothing locked. People came, people left. Sometimes they stayed, sometimes they returned. No need for gates. The land was open, the sky wider still. The fire was never large. It did not roar. It glowed. It whispered. It moved with the breeze. It warmed the feet. It boiled the water. It dried the wood. The people sat around it, not in rows, not in circles, just around, facing different ways, thinking different things. The fire said nothing, but it was heard. Time did not tick. It flowed, like water, like wind, like light through leaves. There was no counting, only noticing, the way shadows moved, the way birds called, the way the cold came sooner. The people did not ask what time it was. They felt it. They followed it. There were no maps. There were no names for every place. But the people knew where they were. They remembered the bend in the stream, the tree with two trunks, the stone shaped like a face. These were the guides, the signs. They walked without getting lost, because the land was familiar, because they listened. When clouds gathered, the people looked up. They did not guess. They did not hope. They observed the shape, the speed, the color. They adjusted what needed adjusting. They brought things under shelter, or did not. The sky would do what it would do. They made peace with that. In the tall grass, small things lived. Mice, insects, birds that did not sing. They moved quickly, did well. The people saw them sometimes, but did not chase, did not trap without reason. There was no joy in killing, only necessity, only balance. The tall grass continued to wave. Sometimes the water in the stream was clear, sometimes cloudy, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. The people drank it, washed with it, let it pass through their fingers. They did not test it. They did not filter it. They knew when it was good and when it was not, by look, by smell, by memory. Children were not taught with lessons. They learned by being near, by doing, by watching, by repeating. A child watched someone carve, then tried. A child watched someone carry water, then did.
No scolding. No pressing.
Just doing. Slowly getting better. Slowly becoming. There were no windows, just openings, covered with hide or wood, letting in air, letting out smoke, letting in light when needed, letting in dark when wanted. The walls were not high, not thick, but they held the wind at bay, and that was enough. The deer did not run unless chased. They walked softly, stopped often, lifted their heads, listened, moved again. The people admired this. The quiet, the calm. They learned from it how to walk, how to breathe, how to disappear into the forest without being lost. The mountains in the distance stayed the same, always far, always silent, but always there. The people saw them from different places, from fields, from rivers, from the tops of low hills. The mountains never moved, but the people did, and that was the relationship. At night, the stars seemed closer, not brighter, just nearer, as if leaning in, as if listening. The people sometimes pointed, sometimes followed their patterns, but not always. Sometimes they just watched until their eyes closed, until the stars disappeared behind sleep. The soil was not rich everywhere, but it was enough. In some places, squash grew, in others, beans, corn in rows, but not too many, just what was needed. The people took care of it, but did not force it. The soil gave when it could. The people thanked it, quietly, always quietly. The sky was never empty, even when clear. Birds flew, smoke drifted, light danced. Sometimes a single cloud hung still, as if thinking. The people did not ask it to go, or to rain. They let it be. It let them be. That was the balance. The path through the trees was narrow, worn by feet, not planned, not drawn, curved with the land. It rose and fell with the roots. The people walked it often, but did not change it. The path knew where to go. The people trusted it. Some stones were flat and wide, warmed by the sun, good for sitting, for sleeping, for drying fruit. They did not shine, they did not move, but they remained. Through seasons, through years, the people did not name them, but they remembered where they were. The wind in the grass made a sound, not a voice, not a song, just movement, passed through, bent each stalk, then moved on. The people heard it. Sometimes it spoke of coming rain, sometimes of distant fire, but mostly it just said, I am here. When people gathered, they did not rush. They came from different directions, quietly, slowly. Some sat, some stood, some said nothing, some said very little. There was no leader,
No speaker.
just people, together, breathing the same air. The tools were not many. A knife,
A basket. A pot.
a bow. They were made with care, with patience, with intent. When they broke, they were fixed, or buried, or passed to the fire. Tools had memory, not magic, but memory, ash from old fires, was not swept away. It mixed with the dirt, became part of the ground. The children sometimes drew in it circles, lines, marks that faded with wind. The people saw them. They did not ask what they meant. Some things were not for asking. There were times when nothing happened.
No hunting. No gathering.
No talking, just sitting, just walking, just breathing. The people did not call this waste. It was part of life, like sleep, like waiting, like watching clouds move. The birds near the river called in the morning, not in unison, not in rhythm, but together. A few notes, then silence, then more. The people did not echo them. They just listened, sometimes with eyes closed, sometimes while grinding corn. The sound was part of waking. When someone dreamed, they did not explain. Not often. Sometimes a word, sometimes a drawing in sand, but mostly silence. The dream was not a message. It was not a command. It was a place the person had gone and returned from and left behind. The bark of some trees peeled in long strips. It was soft, smooth, could be woven, could be burned, could be left to fall. The people knew its uses, but did not rush to take it, only when needed. The tree gave, slowly, quietly. Sometimes rain did not fall for many days. The leaves turned inward. The ground cracked. The streams grew thin. The people drank less, moved slower, waited. They did not panic. The rain would come. It always had. That was enough. Nights were not always dark. Sometimes the moon made shadows, clear ones, like day. The people walked in it, not hurried, not hiding, just walking. The grass glowed, the bark shone. The world looked the same but also different, like a dream just before waking. The old ones carried knowledge without needing to speak. It was in their hands, in the way they walked, in what they did not say. The children learned by being near, by watching, by copying.
No lessons.
No tests, just time, just presence. The fish in the shallow water moved slowly. Their fins stirred silt. They paused under shade, then darted forward. The people watched them, sometimes caught them, with baskets, with hands, but not always. Sometimes just watching was enough. The morning mist did not rise quickly. It lingered, curled around trunks. It softened the shape of things. A branch became a shape. A hut became a shadow. People moved through it, quietly, without words, as if not to disturb it. The berries on the bush ripened in stages, not all at once. Some were red, some still green, some already gone, picked by birds, or time. The people picked a few, left many, not for rules, but for rhythm. The bush would bear again. Sometimes there was a distant sound, a tree falling, the thunder far off, a crack in the ice. The people stopped. They listened, not with fear, but attention, then continued. The sound would pass. It always did. The shadows in winter stretched long, across snow, across bark, across faces. The sun came low. The light felt colder, but it still warmed the hands. A little. The people stood in it when they could. They turned their faces to it and closed their eyes. The bones of animals were not thrown away. They were shaped into needles, into tools, into ornaments. The people touched them gently, as if they still remembered breath, not with sorrow, not with guilt, with respect. Footsteps in mud told stories. Someone passed this way, a child, a deer, a heavy load. Then rain washed them away, and the story ended, or paused, until new steps came, and new stories began. Without words, without ink, there were seasons without color, only browns, grays, faded greens. The people did not call it dull. It was quiet, like sleep, like memory. It was not empty. It was resting, waiting for the return of bloom. A single feather caught on a branch, moved slightly in wind, white with a dark edge. Someone saw it, did not touch it, just looked, then walked on. The feather stayed, until it didn't. Wind would take it, or rain, or time. The earth under bare feet was different in different places. Cool under trees, warm in the open, damp near water, dry on paths. The people felt it with each step, noticing, learning, without needing to name. Smoke curled from a fire, then vanished, into leaves, into sky, into breath. The people let it go, did not follow it, did not hold it. It was part of the air now, part of the world again. A basket sat by the door, woven tight, worn at the edge, filled with dried roots. It had been filled before. It would be filled again. The shape held memory. The hands that wove it were gone, but the weave remained. Some nights there was no sound, no wind,
No birds.
no movement. The silence was full, not empty. It wrapped the huts, wrapped the mines. People slept deeper. The stars blinked slowly. Nothing stirred. Everything waited. The rain did not begin all at once. It started with stillness, then a scent, then the smallest sound, pat, then another. The people did not run. They listened. They turned their faces upward. They waited. The rain would fall. It always did. When it came, it was not loud. Tapped on leaves. It slid down bark. It made small ripples in puddles. It gathered in bowls. It soaked into the ground. The people covered what needed covering, then sat, or stood, or walked slowly through it. Each person had a place to sit, not assigned, not marked, just known. A rock, a step, a log, a patch of ground near the fire. They returned to it, again and again. It remembered them, and they it. When someone sang alone, the sound did not rise, stayed near. It blended with air. It was not for others. It was not for praise. It was not a story. It was breath with tone, a note that had waited, then came, then left. The trees spoke in movement, in leaf rustle, in branch tilt, in creaks in cold. The people listened, not with ears only, but with skin, with body. The trees said, I am here. I have seen this day before. I will see it again. Footprints in snow were quiet. They said where someone had been, not where they were going. The snow did not hurry to cover them. It waited. Then wind came, or sun. Then the marks were gone. But the people remembered. For a while, some things were always carried. A small pouch, a flint, cord, token, not shown, not spoken of, but always there. Each person had their own. This meaning was not shared. It was enough that it was carried. The wind moved through the opening in the wall. It made the flame bend. It lifted the edge of a blanket. It brought the scent of dry grass. It left again. The people watched it come, watched it go. Nothing held it. The same stars returned each season, the same shapes, the same points, but always a little different, a little earlier, a little further across the sky. The people did not name them all, but they knew them, like familiar faces, distant but constant. The river sometimes overflowed. It left behind silt, branches, smooth stones. The people walked along its edges. They did not rebuild right away. They watched, waited, let the river tell them when. The water knew what it was doing. Some huts were empty for seasons, then filled again, then empty, then filled. The door coverings weathered. The ashes inside cooled, then warmed. Nothing stayed the same. Nothing needed to. At dawn, the horizon turned light before the sun came. The people saw the color change. They stirred, not with alarm, but with rhythm. Day was coming, like it always did, slowly, gradually, without rush. The darkness became gray, then pale, then gold. No one called out to begin the day. It began itself. A footstep, pot moved, a cough, the crack of a stick. One by one the people woke, or rose, or sat up. The world was already moving. They joined it. A small fire was started with dried moss. A spark, a breath, then flame, then light, then heat. It did not leap high. It did not consume. It glowed. It offered. It waited. The people gathered around it, not because they had to, but because it was there. Smoke curled from a fire, then vanished, into leaves, into sky, into breath. The people let it go, did not follow it, did not hold it. It was part of the air now, part of the world again. A basket sat by the door, woven tight, worn at the edge, filled with dried roots. It had been filled before. It would be filled again. The shape held memory. The hands that wove it were gone, but the weave remained. Some nights there was no sound, no wind,
No birds.
no movement. The silence was full, not empty. It wrapped the huts, wrapped the minds. People slept deeper. The stars blinked slowly. Nothing stirred. Everything waited. The rain did not begin all at once. It started with stillness, then a scent, then the smallest sound, pat, then another. The people did not run. They listened. They turned their faces upward. They waited. The rain would fall. It always did. When it came, it was not loud. Tapped on leaves. It slid down bark. It made small ripples in puddles. It gathered in bowls. It soaked into the ground. The people covered what needed covering, then sat, or stood, or walked slowly through it. Each person had a place to sit, not assigned, not marked, just known. A rock, a step, a log, a patch of ground near the fire. They returned to it, again and again. It remembered them, and they it. When someone sang alone, the sound did not rise, stayed near. It blended with air. It was not for others. It the roots of the tree curled above the ground, twisted, exposed, still strong. They held the tree through storm, through frost, through heat. The people sat near it sometimes, not to worship, not to study, just to be. The roots were there. So were they. The moss on stone was soft, even in cold. It grew slowly, silently. It did not cover everything, only what allowed it. The people touched it now and then, with care, not to take, just to feel, to know it was still alive. Sometimes an old song was hummed with no words, pattern of notes, not remembered from anyone, just there, came and went, like breath, like light through branches. The people did not ask its name. It had none. It did not need one. The smoke from cooking rose in threads, not thick, not fast, curled, spread, faded. It smelled of wood, of earth, of ash. The people breathed it in, not deeply, just enough to know it was there. The food would be warm soon. No fences marked land. No signs declared names. The people moved through space the way wind moved through grass, knowing when to stop, knowing when to stay. If another came, they nodded. If not, they watched the birds instead. The shape of hills stayed unchanged for lifetimes, rounded, quiet, worn by rain, not high, not sharp, but present. They held the horizon in place. They did not invite. They did not refuse. They were simply there. When snow fell, it fell without sound. Softened edges, covered tracks, filled the space between things. The people walked through it, not slowly, not quickly, just at the pace of falling snow. Their breath joined the cold air. It was not resisted. A basket of dry leaves sat near the fire. Not useful, not needed, but kept. It had once been used for medicine, for warmth, for scent. Now it rested. The people did not throw it out. They left it alone. The past sometimes stays close. The stream in spring ran faster, higher. It brought pebbles, broken sticks, bits of last season. The people stepped over it, or through it, or watched it go. It would slow again. It always did. That was the way of things. One hut leaned slightly, just a little. It had done so for years. No one fixed it. No one minded. It still kept out the rain, still held warmth. The tilt was part of it now, like a wrinkle in bark, like a line in a palm. The birds that stayed through winter did not sing. They clicked. They moved low. They ate what they found. The people scattered seeds now and then. Not often, just enough. The birds remembered. They returned each year. Firewood was stacked in uneven piles, not neat, not straight, but sturdy, dry, ready. It had been gathered one piece at a time, not all at once. The people knew which would burn slow, which cracked loud, which smelled of sweet smoke. The ground beneath the fire was dark, from years of heat, from ash, from embers. Nothing grew there, but it was not dead. It remembered, it waited, it knew the weight of stones, the circle of feet, the rise and fall of flame. At night, breath turned to mist, a sign of cold, a sign of quiet. The people pulled their coverings closer, not in fear, not in pain, just in recognition of the way the world moved, the way cold came, the way bodies answered. The earth after rain smelled deep, dark, like roots, like stone, like stillness. The people noticed, not with words, just with breath. It was the smell of newness and of memory, the same smell as before the last planting, and the one before that. Some logs at the edge of the clearing were too heavy to move, covered in moss, cracked by time, hollowed by insects. They were not waste. They were part of the edge. Birds nested inside. Lizards hid beneath. They stayed. The sky at dusk turned from blue to gray to silver. Slowly, without lines, the people looked up sometimes, not to measure, not to judge, just to see. A bird passed across. A branch waved. Night came like a hand closing softly. When children played, they used what was near. A stone, a stick, a leaf, a shadow. They made sounds. They ran. They sat. They watched ants. The people nearby watched them too. Not to teach, not to stop, just to be near. A fallen branch was not thrown away. It was examined, felt, turned. It might be firewood, or a digging stick, or a part of a frame, or nothing. If nothing, it was left. The ground would take it back. In the early morning, frost made edges on leaves. Fine, clear, like glass. It melted with touch, with light. The people saw it, then walked past. It was not rare. It was not strange. It was part of waking. The hills turned color slowly in autumn. Not bright, not sudden. One tree at a time. A leaf here, a branch there. The change did not speak. Crept. It softened. The wind moved it along. The people nodded. The season was turning. Some stones near the river had holes worn through them, from years of drip, from centuries of water. They were not useful, but they stayed. The people sometimes dropped seeds in them, or shells, or nothing, just walked past. When someone left the camp for a time, they said little. A nod, a word, a gesture, then gone. When they returned, the same. No questions.
No demands.
They were here again. That was enough. A circle of stones remained long after the fire was gone. Still warm, still ash-covered. The people walked around it, sometimes sat again, sometimes added wood, sometimes not. It was always there, even when cold. Old rope hung from a tree limb. It no longer held anything. Frayed, soft. The wind moved it slightly. The people did not cut it down. It had held water vessels once, or baskets, or fish. Now it held memory. When clouds passed low, they hid the tops of trees. The forest shrank. The world lowered. The people walked slower. Sounds were closer. Their breath was part of the cloud. No need to speak. The fog spoke enough. Sometimes a deer appeared, stopped, looked, then moved on. No one chased. No one raised a bough. The deer was not food today. It was presence, a movement in the stillness, a sign of life, of balance. Then it was gone. The bark of certain trees peeled in wide sheets, like paper, crinkled when touched, could be burned, or written on, or folded. The people took only what fell. The rest stayed. It belonged to the tree. A low hum came from insects in warm months. Not a song, not music, just sound. Constant, shifting. The people worked within it, slept within it, dreamed within it. It filled the air, like breath, like waiting. The wind in summer was soft, passed over grass, through open shelters, over water. It did not shake. It did not roar. It whispered. It brought the scent of pine, of dust, of time. The people sat with it, let it touch their skin. The sand by the riverbank was warm at midday, cool at dawn. It held tracks for a short time. Then the water or wind erased them. A turtle passed across, left a slow trail. The people saw it, then walked another way. A piece of flint chipped long ago still lay by a tree, sharp on one edge, smoothed on the other. No one claimed it. No one moved it. It had served its purpose. Now it rested. The people walked past it many times. It stayed. Some plants closed when touched, their leaves folding inward, not in fear, not in pain, just instinct. The people touched gently, then waited. The leaves opened again, slowly, like trust returning. When rain returned after drought, the dust rose first, then the scent, then the sound. The first drops were separate, clear, like stones, then faster. The people watched. Some stood in it, eyes closed, mouths open. They did not speak. A sleeping place was chosen by habit, by feel, by quiet. It was not always the same, but it was always known. A certain tree, a certain space between stones. The people lay down without words. Sleep came with the dark. In winter, ice formed along the edges of everything, caught light, cracked under steps. It melted with sun. The people moved carefully, slowly. Their breath made clouds. They warmed their hands together, one over another. No drums were played often, only sometimes. One beat, then pause, then two, then stillness. Not to summon, not to announce, just to feel the sound, the echo inside bones, the silence between beats. Leaves turned dry before falling. They curled at the edges, turned pale, then brown, then dropped, one at a time. The people did not sweep them, did not gather them. They left them where they fell. The ground wanted them. A mark on a tree was seen often, cut long ago, grown around, still visible, a line, a reminder. The people knew who had made it, but did not speak the name. It was enough that the mark remained. Smoke from far off meant others. Not danger, not welcome, just presence. The people watched the column rise, then fade. They did not follow, did not send word, just watched, then returned to their tasks. A line of ants moved across the camp, around stones, through grass, into wood. The people stepped over, did not crush. The ants had a purpose, path, a reason, like the people, like the clouds, like time. Sometimes a voice rose in sleep, a single word, or none, a sound. The others did not wake, or if they did, they turned, listened for a moment, then returned to sleep. The voice faded. The dream went on. The water in a bowl shimmered with starlight. Just a little, just enough. A hand dipped in, lifted, dropped. The surface changed, then stilled. The stars returned. The bowl held the sky again. One tree stood alone on a rise, not tall, not large, but alone. The people saw it when passing. Some touched its bark. Some sat beneath. Some said nothing. The tree remained. Through wind, through snow, through memory. The tools were stored under woven mats. Not hidden, not displayed, just kept. A stone blade, a smooth bone, curved branch. Each had been used many times. Each waited quietly to be used again. Or not. The light in the shelter changed with the sun. A beam would move across a wall, then disappear. Another would fall on the floor, then rise to the ceiling. The people did not follow it, but they noticed. The day told its own story in light. A squirrel passed through the branches. It made no sound, paused, then ran again. The people glanced upward, then back to their work. The squirrel was part of the place. It needed no attention. A pot had cracked in winter, mended with pitch. It now held dried seeds. The people touched it carefully. The crack was a part of it now. It had not broken, only changed, like everything else. At night, a cough echoed once, then silence, a shift of blankets, a creak of woven reeds, then stillness. The stars moved overhead. The air cooled. The breath of many people slowed together. Sleep deepened. A branch in the fire snapped. A small spark jumped. No one moved. The flames returned to their slow pattern. The logs shifted slightly. The sound was not alarming, just part of the rhythm. A line of shadows moved across the grass at midday, made by clouds, by leaves, by birds. The people sat in shade or in sun. It did not matter. They shifted when they wished. No rules, no need. A child drew a shape in the dust, then another, then wiped it away. A new one came, then another. No one asked what it was. The shape was made, then gone. The child's hand returned to stillness. The stream made a new path after a storm, slightly different, slightly sharper in one bend. A stone now sat in the middle. The people crossed upstream instead. The new shape would stay for a while, or not. Insects gathered near the lantern. Their wings buzzed, flickered, then went still. The flame flickered too, then calmed. The people leaned back, eyes half closed. The night continued around them. One word was spoken softly, then not repeated. It lingered in the air, then faded, not because it was forgotten, but because it had been enough, like a breath, like a step, one, then none. The path through the tall grass narrowed, then widened. The people followed it slowly. The grass brushed their sides. The sun warmed their backs. The path had no end. It led where it led. A feather was found near the stream, pale, long, clean. It was lifted, touched, turned, then placed on a rock. It would blow away, or stay, or be found again. The people did not take it. It was not theirs. The fog did not lift quickly. It rolled and rested, then rolled again. The trees became outlines, then shapes, then trees again. The people moved through it as if underwater. Slowly, gently, without voice. The ashes from the last fire were cool now. They marked time. What had burned was gone. What had not would remain. A stick still charred. A stone still blackened. The people did not clean them. They waited. A shell was left on a flat stone. White, smooth, its edges worn by time. It did not come from nearby. It had traveled. How far, no one said. It was now here. The people passed it often. They let it be. The night insects had stopped. The day insects had not yet begun. That moment in between was still.
No buzzing. No winds.
Just quiet. The people stirred in sleep. Not waking. Just moving. The stillness held them. A tree leaned against another. Not fallen. Just leaning. They had grown that way for years. The wind bent them. The ground shifted. They held each other now. The people looked at them sometimes, said nothing. A stone bowl rested in the shade. Inside, dust. Some seeds. A bit of broken bark. It had been used that morning. It might be used again. Or not. It was left there. In the shadow. In the heat. In the quiet. Footsteps did not echo. The ground was soft. Grass and moss. Dirt and needles. The sound was small. Close. The people walked lightly. Not from fear. But from knowing. The land was not theirs to disturb. Water dripped from a leaf. One drop. Then another. Then silence. The people watched it without turning their heads. It was rhythm. The drop. The pause. The drop again. Then dry. Then done. A broken tool was kept. Not used. But not thrown away. It had shaped things. Cut things. Carried memory. It lay on a shelf of stone. No words written. No meaning declared. But it stayed. In the shadow of the great stone, coolness lingered. Even in heat, the people sat there sometimes, not to escape the sun, but to feel the difference. Shade, stone, bird. The cool that comes with silence. Birdsong returned with the light. One bird, then another. Not loud, not fast. Notes spaced like thoughts. The people heard. They did not answer, but they heard. That was enough. A rope tied to a post had frayed in the wind. It no longer held anything, but it moved, back and forth. Slowly, the people saw it. They let it swing. It had served its purpose. Now it danced alone. The coals beneath the ash still glowed. Faint, red, alive, not fire, not cold. In between, the people stirred them gently, added small sticks, waited. The flame came back, or it did not. The hills in the distance looked soft, blue with distance, pale with light. The people did not go to them today, but they looked. Sometimes that was enough, to know they were there, to let them be. The sun touched the edge of the shelter, one line of light across woven grass. It moved slowly, then vanished. The shadow returned. The people stayed inside. The light would return later. When someone sang, it was not for performance, not to be heard, but because the song was there, inside, needing to come out. It flowed, paused. It ended. The others listened, or they didn't. It did not matter. A pile of stones near the river had no reason, no use. They had been placed there over time, one by one, without plan. Now they made a shape, of weight, of waiting. The people stepped around them. The ash that rose from the fire drifted upward, then sideways, then vanished. It left no trail, no mark. The people watched it go, not with wonder, not with grief, just with eyes open. A small wooden bowl cracked from dryness. It was once used for herbs, then berries, then nothing. Now it sat on a ledge. Dust collected in it. The crack widened in winter. In summer it closed slightly. The people noticed, then turned away. A patch of moss covered the north side of a tree. Deep green, damp, soft under fingers. The people touched it when passing. No one asked why. It was a thing to touch. That was all. The wind came stronger in the evening. It bent grasses. It stirred ash. It moved the hanging ropes. The people adjusted their cloaks, faced away, faced toward. No fear, just wind. A carved bone was left on a flat rock, its meaning forgotten or never known. The people passed it. Sometimes someone touched it, sometimes not. It remained. A bird flew low and straight, not soaring, not circling, just passing through. Its wings beat with effort, not grace. The people looked up briefly, then down again. It was only flight. The bark on the old tree peeled off in wide strips. Beneath it, smooth pale wood. Insects lived there, and silence. The people did not scrape it. They let the bark fall on its own. A spider spun a web in the corner of a shelter. Thin strands, almost invisible. The light caught it in the morning, then not. The people did not brush it away. The spider lived too. The ground was dry, then wet, then dry again, cracked, then softened. The people's feet knew each state. They walked the same way regardless. Slowly, always, one voice called out across the clearing. Not loud, not sharp, just a name. Then quiet. No answer came. The name was not called again. The air took it. The silence returned. A bowl filled with water sat outside. The surface mirrored clouds. Then wind broke the image. Then it settled again. The people drank from it. The bowl remained still. The walls of the shelter creaked in the cold. Wood shrinking, then stretching, a sound like a sigh. The people inside did not wake. It was a known sound, not new. The sky at dawn turned from black to gray to something else. The stars faded slowly. One, then another, then all. The light returned with no hurry. The people blinked, then rose. A feather fell straight down. From nowhere, it spun once, then landed, white against dark earth. No one touched it. No one spoke. It remained for a day. Then it was gone. A stack of firewood leaned slightly, one log out of place. But it did not fall. It had leaned for days, weeks. The people added to it carefully. It held its shape. The smoke from the fire curled into the air, thin at first, then thick, then thin again. The people sat near it, not for warmth, not for food, just to be near it. Smoke had its own language. A child held a stick, drew a line in the dirt, then another, then a circle, then erased them all with one sweep. The dirt accepted both the drawing and the erasure. The child moved on. A bird landed on a stump, tilted its head, hopped twice, then flew away. No one followed it with their eyes. It had come. It had gone. The stump remained. The wind moved through dry grass with a low hiss. Not a whistle, not a howl, just a sound like breath. The people listened. They did not move. The wind passed on. Pot hung above the embers. It did not boil. It steamed, slowly, softly. The smell of roots and herbs rose with it. The people waited. There was no rush. The water would become what it needed to become. A stone path curved for no reason, around nothing, toward nothing. The curve was smooth, felt right underfoot. The people walked it as it was. No one questioned the curve. The ground was littered with pine needles, some brown, some golden. The people walked on them without noticing. Their feet crushed them silently. The trees gave more the next day. The old man sat with his hands in his lap. He looked ahead, not at anything, just ahead. He breathed. He blinked. He sat. The others walked by. He remained. The sky clouded over. Slowly, a soft gray covered the blue, then deepened. No rain yet, just weight in the air. The people gathered their things, not hurried, not slow, prepared. A dog stretched by the fire, groaned once, then lay still, its eyes closed. Its ear twitched once, then stopped. The fire cracked. The people were quiet. The dog slept. One basket held dry leaves. Another held stones. Another held nothing. Each had been woven by different hands, at different times. The baskets were placed together. The people knew which was which. The grass was taller by the river now. It swayed even without wind. The current was louder. The water had risen. The people watched it for a while, then walked away. A stone was smooth from many touches. It had been picked up, put down, picked up again. not because it was needed, but because it was there. The people touched it as they passed. The stone remained. A cracked horn sat on a shelf. It had not been used in a long time, still made sound. If asked, no one asked. It stayed quiet. That was fine. The clay along the riverbank was soft. A footstep left a deep mark. Then another. Then the marks faded with water. The people did not mind. The clay had its own memory. The old shelter had a wall that leaned. Not enough to fall, just enough to notice. It had leaned that way since the last wind. No one fixed it. It still kept out the cold. A gourd hung by a string. It moved in the breeze, turned once, then again. It made no sound. The people saw it, then passed by. It had always been there. The stones in the fire ring were blackened. Some were cracked, others smooth. They had seen many fires, heard many stories, though none were told aloud. The fire spoke enough. A woman sat by the door, weaving. Her hands moved slowly. The fibers bent and turned. She hummed under her breath. No melody, just sound. Her work was long, but not hard. The moon rose without notice. The stars made room for it. It passed silently above the trees. The people looked once, then went inside. The moon watched alone. A wooden spoon lay beside an empty bowl. It was carved from a branch long ago, its handle smooth from fingers. No one picked it up today. It would be used tomorrow, or the next day. The path to the well was lined with stones, some small, some large, all placed by different hands. The stones were not even. The path was not straight, but it led where it needed to go. Leaves had gathered in the corners of the square, dry, crisp. The wind moved them in small circles, then left them still. The people stepped around them, not through. A boy sat under the big tree. He counted something in his hand. Pebbles, seeds, something small. He counted, then dropped them, then gathered them again. The world around him waited. A shadow moved across the canvas wall. A branch, a bird, a cloud. The shape changed as the light changed. The people inside did not look. The shadow was only passing. A bone flute lay near the fire pit. It had not been played in weeks, or longer. It had a crack on the edge, but the holes were clean. A child touched it, then set it back down. The wind brought the smell of rain before the clouds came. Earthy, cold. The people looked at the sky, then at each other, then gathered what needed gathering. Without a word, two sticks had been tied together long ago. A toy, a marker, a memory. It now leaned against a tree. The string was frayed. The sticks were dry, but they still held their shape. The corn was drying on a rack. The kernels darkened slowly. Each day the sun touched them. The people turned them now and then. Not often, just enough. The mountain was far away, but it never moved. It stayed gray, then blue, then black at night. The people used it to know direction, and time, and change.